Good morning, everyone. If you would pledge of allegiance.
Agenda. Pine Mountain Club Property Owner of Directors Special Draft Budget Open Board Meeting, Saturday, April 11th, 2026, 10 a.m. Condor Room. Call to order. Joshua Armin. Mark Bailey.
Yeah.
Addison Bodorf. Josh. And I'm also here. Sean Coulter's on his way. Nicole Gates. Randall Gates.
Here.
Andrea Schoening.
Yeah.
Douglas Wild. Adopt the agenda. Resolve that the agenda for the Board of Directors Special Open Board Draft Budget, April 11th, 2026, be adopted.
Okay.
Who's? Okay, vote to adopt the agenda.
Not yet.
Okay.
Is that all in favor? Good. Josh, if you could verbally let us know, because I can't see. Thank you so much. Moving on to our session. George is going to lead us through, and board members sitting in the audience, we will after the presentation.
Morning, everybody. Manager. Today we're going to go budget. Here is the outline for you. We'll read the budget process timeline. 6. Budget objectives, as well as the budget. Review the calculation assessment. 5. Carry over projected. All the departmental budgets and changes to the upcoming year. Finally, recap of the. After the presentation has concluded, we'll have a board session. After that, mission statement, Pine Mountain property, quality service members, and capital assets. Protect the effective atmosphere and practice. We are looking at the budget process line. January, February, all the manager budget for the upcoming operating schedule, projects. March 5th, had our first meeting with the budget. Met again on 6th, all budget. March 12th, consisting of myself, general manager, treasurer, and all reserve items with part of the budget process is to reflect the actual. April 8th, met with the finance. Day 11th, again with the working upcoming dates based on 18th, Saturday. Establish if a start printing. If you guys haven't picked up a packet from it, I highly recommend. The objectives for follows: maintaining high standards for business while budgeting down. Understand that we are dealing with an entity, that the purpose of the entity is not to profit or break even, but to provide enjoyment and convenience. However, the action prevents us from budgeting process. Budgeting to ensure the proper maintenance of assets. Part of the zero budgeting, managers detailed maintenance schedules, all equipment, vehicles, sufficient for budgeted hits as well as up. Developing budgets, operational. Like I mentioned here, have been working directly with all managers. This year's actual state spending, known upcoming projects, build each budget line item from departmental cost allocation, ensure budget accuracy, operating. One of the most important updates to it was the allocation of facility expenses have been budgeted on clubhouse maintenance. Total cost of water, electricity, propane has been allocated. I'll go check this out on each. Another very important objective is reserve. 2026, 2027, we are once again budgeting Senate Bill 3, which passed in requires an annual increase tied to the price in that. 2024, we had a 3.5%, 5, 6, a 2.5%, 7. This trend continues. None of us for this upcoming year, we are expecting as well as a 5% increase. There is some good news. Actual general insurance for this fiscal is a lot higher than anticipated. 5% on that budgeted. That to say is we budgeted much. This coming fiscal year, we did budget for 8% off fee of the fee. 2015 year, the boarding fees have increased. All fee an average of 7%. RV storage has based. Minimum wage has increased 9%. That same $10 an hour. This fee schedule, the catch up, covers. Finally, payroll adjustment. Here we had a few employees hire general manager also schedule and okay, 2026 have an assessment by 117 adjustment to payroll, total D 1,989, operating expense 94. We had a $10,800 budgeted revenue, 1,000 makes up this makes up 100. We have a projected carryover of the 25-20 projected. This carryover is based annual total carryover 160,005 based on 520. Are they saying that it's too low or it's just? I'm gonna change mics. Hopefully that fixes it. Test, test, test. Can everybody hear me on YouTube? Test, test, test.
Can those online hear us now?
I turned it up, so it's gonna be a little louder. All right, I think we resolved the technical difficulties. Let me know, Nicole. All right. So the projected carryover is 261,205. And that's due to operating revenue, which is projected to be worse than budget, 169,321. Payroll expenses are projected to be better than budget, 265,989. And operating expenses better than budget, 164,537, for a total carryover of 261,205. The projected carryover for last year was 47,910, but actually resulted in a deficit of 59,680, and that's due to the write-off of work in progress capitalized expenses. So this results in the final 25-26 projected carryover of 153,615, which equates to a $53 decrease in assessments. Here we just have a pie chart of allocation of assessment by departments, and that's all included in your packet. And then a table with all that same information. All right. Now we'll go over the changes to the individual departments. Admin and office, budgeted revenue was adjusted downward to reflect what we're earning in interest due to the rate decreases. The annual rental fee for short-term and long-term rental is going to be removed and will now become a one-time payment. This results in a downward adjustment of $86,805 for revenue. Payroll. The following positions were eliminated from the budget: operations manager, communications coordinator, and the admin clerk. Due to operational improvements like the use of the SharePoint platform, which greatly reduced the amount of manual labor needed to create board books and share information within the board and committees, as well as updates to our club management software. This will enable us to make direct payments to member accounts, reducing the amount of time spent on reconciliation. Because of these changes, the admin and accounting staff will be able to absorb some of those tasks performed by those individuals. As far as clubhouse renovations, we will work closely with the EC committee and use their expertise to guide us through these upcoming renovations. These updates result in a downward payroll adjustment of $206,443.
Regarding the not backfilling, what I've been able to do is better understand what we can do with who we have. We got a great staff. We're able to do more with less, but I'm trying to be reasonable on, who's doing what and making sure that the load is shared and distributed amongst the staff. But as far as, the operations manager, we will incur those tasks and we will get it done.
Operating expenses, downward adjustment of $96,010. For this upcoming fiscal year, we will be filing as a 501c4, which means no income taxes on investment income. We also removed a medical contingency budget line that was allocated to all departments. So the total reduction for the admin office department is $215,648. Association business revenue was adjusted upward $2,000. By the beginning of the new fiscal year, we will have the website and updated quarterly condors up and running. So So we expect a slight increase in advertisement revenue. Expenses increased 31,660. The full-time benefited communications coordinator was replaced with a 40-hour-a-month 1099 contractor. This is where that expense is accounted for. We also increased the EP committee budget to 12,000 from 5. They requested this additional funding to purchase equipment to improve communication capabilities in the community. We also increased all committee budgets to provide funding needed for them to host town halls. The total increase for association business is 29,660. Patrol revenue, which consists of fines and violations, was adjusted downward 15,400. Assembly Bill 130, signed in June 2025, capped the HOA POA fines to $100 per violation, with the exception of violations related to health and safety. Payroll decreased 39,443. A full-time employee requested to be moved to part-time. This change is reflected in this upcoming year's budget. Expenses decreased 3,714. We reduced the vehicle maintenance budget line. The patrol vehicles are due to be replaced in July. Any major repairs will be covered by warranty. The total decrease for patrol is 27,757. Environmental control, revenue increased 4,062 following this year's trend. Payroll increased due to the 3% minimum wage and 9% medical insurance increases. Operating expenses increase. This is due to the allocation of utility costs. Total increase for environmental control is 3,225. Maintenance operations, revenue decreased 1,970 following this year's trend. Payroll decreased 8,662. We eliminated the mechanic position. The duties were absorbed by the other maintenance employees. Operating expenses increased 32,587. The maintenance manager is expecting some major repairs on both the roto chopper and the loader. We also budgeted for maintenance kits needed that align with their maintenance schedule for this upcoming fiscal year. The total increase for maintenance is 25,895. Refuse and recycling, revenue increased 2,152. The volume of recycling has increased this year, and we expect this trend to continue. Payroll increased 984. This is due to the 3% minimum wage increase. Hours were also adjusted downward based on the current schedule. Refuse and recycling expenses increased 18,361. The volume of trash has steadily increased for the last few years, as well as consistent rate hikes. We believe this trend will continue and budgeted accordingly. The total increase for refuse and recycling is 17,193. Greens and grounds revenue increased. RV and campground fees were increased as shown on the fee schedule. Payroll increased 18,382. Additional hours were budgeted to allow for better maintenance of the parks, trails, and campgrounds. We also have someone on staff with the expertise needed to revitalize all our wood signs we have here around the community. Operating expenses increased 37,675, and this is all due to the cost allocation of utilities, which amounted to 48,548. The total increase for Greens and Grounds is 48,017. Food and beverage revenue was decreased 21,203 to reflect current trends. Payroll decreased 48,942. Our goal is to reduce the number of full-time employees, which will be done through attrition. The goal is to have a full part-time staff. This is how most restaurants operate. Operating expenses increased 6,447. The cost allocation of utilities amounted to 37,660 for this department. The total decrease for food and beverage is 21,292. Pro Shop revenue increased due to the 33% increase to the fee schedule. Payroll increased due to the 3% minimum wage increase. Operating expenses decreased 4,565. So the cost of goods sold expense line for merchandise was removed. James, you comment?
Since I began last year, been here almost a year, the aged merchandise, aged goods. I mean, I don't know that we have a clear answer on how old the inventory is, but you know, when you buy a lot of inventory and it just sits on your books, that valuation just drags you down. So we've made huge efforts to try to move that merchandise. When we get the new website, I think, you know, the best plan, what we're discussing now is kind of a drop ship, you know, select what you want online, it delivers, pick it up. So, you know, just an effort to keep merchandise managed is what we're gonna do.
Clubhouse maintenance payroll increased 33,657. We hired a handyman at a higher hourly wage to do more technical in-house repairs, including repairs on electrical and plumbing. Operating expenses decreased 226,358. Like I mentioned earlier, all the utility costs were budgeted under this department. So the total decrease for clubhouse maintenance is 192,701. The Equestrian Center, revenue increased 72,840 due to the 33% increase to the fee schedule. Payroll decreased 26,441. The amount of part-time hours were reduced. Operating expenses increased 9,492. The cost allocation of utilities amounted to 7,612 for this department. So the total decrease for the Equestrian Center is 89,789. Post office revenue decreased 25,920. The decision was made to cancel our driving contract with the U.S. Postal Service. Payroll decreased 45,759. Because we canceled the driving contract, we eliminated the 2 driver positions. Those employees were driving to Frazier Park twice a day. Operating expenses decreased 12,688. We are no longer budgeting for vehicle maintenance and fuel. The total decrease for the post office is 32,527. The pool revenue, slight increase following this year's trend. Payroll decreased 6,798 due to reduction in pool attendance. Operating expenses increased 13,275. So the cost of propane was already budgeted under this department. We just added electricity. That added an additional 7,908. We also increased the budget for supplies and maintenance and repairs. This pool is in need of some maintenance. The total increase for the pool is 4,427. Rec revenue was decreased by 200. Payroll decreased 13,404 since the schedules were adjusted. James, to comment.
Yeah, certainly on pool and rec. So the reduction in some of the hours for pool attendants purposefully. In those days, Monday through Thursday, during the daytime, that's what we're talking about, reducing that. I mean, folks pay to have their pool cards, use the pool. You know, what were the pool attendants doing on those days? I would say doing what we paid them to do. But in an effort to open the pool earlier, or perhaps keep it open longer on the back end, this is an ability to do that. But there's other things being discussed, such as solar. I think that's kind of on the horizon. I've had a couple conversations on that. But on rec, reducing some of the hours there as far as a rec attendant, I mean, it's all based on usage and access and how many folks are utilizing that. So we have a manager that works full-time down there, and we will come up with a process to ensure that folks can sign stuff out. So, those hours, I feel like this is a good plan.
Rec operating expenses decreased $4,597. That's based on the manager's needs. The total decrease for rec is $17,801. Projects. Revenue, which is comprised of the fire mitigation transfer fee, was reduced by $19,500. The amount of transfers, purchases has decreased this year. We project this trend to continue. Greenbelt cleanup stayed the same at $50,000. Other budgeted items, the reserve funding budget increased by $10,810 to $610,810. And like I mentioned earlier, the current carryover is projected to be $153,615. $153,615, sorry. Now, onto the reserve study. The following updates were made to the reserve study for fiscal year 2026-2027. The inflation assumption was increased from 3 to 3.5%. The starting cash balance updated to the projected amount of $5.6 million as of July 1st. The following were updates that were approved on the November 15, 2025 board meeting. 26 component duplications totaling $925,750 were removed. 9 components were found to have excessive replacement costs and were reduced by $867,150. 31 components totaling $507,938 were added, including the pool. Other updates include changes to the useful life and remaining useful life of all components. Based on the changes we have made and presented to the board, we are currently projected to be 95% funded with a little over $5.6 million in the reserve. A fully funded reserve would require $5,895,501. The current adopted funding plan is a 75% funded target in 30 years. With this plan, we expect reserve funding increases of around $25,000 for the next 5 years. With this plan, we will not fall under 75% funded at any point in the next 30 years. I think that concludes the presentation. We'll now move on to board discussion and then open it up to Q&A for the members.
the wireless one?
Yeah, it was too close to another mic.
Now,
Yeah, just, okay.
George, if the wireless mic wasn't working for us, will it work for members? Okay. We can leave it there for Josh for now.
Josh isn't going to be here.
We'll hear him. He's on Zoom.
Okay.
Josh.
Great, thank you everyone for bearing with us.
It's you walking around. Or is it me? Is it?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, a lot of those mics close
There's a
together.
sensitivity.
Before we begin our board discussion, I would like James to have an opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Good morning. I started this time last year on the tail end of 24-25 and approving the 25-26 budget within my first few weeks. It was a lot to try and digest and understanding, of the trends, the labor costs, operating costs, understanding how we do business here. Now in a few weeks, I'll have a year almost done. So 3 weeks and counting here, get 1 year tour of duty. I'm excited. I've learned there isn't a perfect system, or solution to creating an efficient budget. Normally, you would rely on the trends, such as revenue, peaks and valleys, supplier vendor costs, a lot of that here. And you adjust accordingly. The core element of our budget is the annual assessment. And a lot of this is just what I know based on how long I've been here. An increase or decrease is based on the combined operating expenses, labor, revenue needs across all departments. I spent countless hours reviewing the budget with George. And in 25-26, unlike the previous GM, spent 0 hours on the budget in his 18 months. And I have been dealing with a lot. I've been reconciling, recouping monies, we have off-boarding fees. When we cancel contracts, there's folks trying to get 10, 12 grand out of us on off-boarding fees. I don't think I paid any off-boarding fee yet, not yet. It's very frustrating, it's difficult. There's a lot of areas we can improve in, but I'm also a member. I maintain, my perspective, knowing as a member also, my rationale or perspective is based on many factors. And I'm still learning and applying anything else that I hear, learn, discover. I talk to a lot of folks. A lot of folks call. A lot of folks email. A lot of folks come just to sit down in my office. Those factors that I apply to my rationale, my thinking, what's best for the community, as a whole. The whole is made up of the sum of all the parts. The demographics and the fixed incomes out there, the board perspective and responsibilities. The board as a collective body, although the directors have individual-based opinions. I take all that into consideration. The association management's perspective, that's a collective perspective. You know, the different departments, each department manager, we've got great folks here. I mean, that's what I'm learning. You know, they know their business. They know how to operate. You know, I'm just trying to help as much as I can, you know, to succeed together. Other external factors, the annual increases, you know, labor, fuel, supplies, equipment, benefits, inflation, you know, it's just a tremendous amount of stuff that we have. The reality is that it is a higher cost structure today. The other factor, most importantly, members' needs and perspective. Members, committee members, you know, employees. I mean, they're all factors to me. That's what I try to apply. There's just a lot of factors, a lot of different opinions, a lot of different.
The audience
perspectives.
could please stay quiet. Thank you.
In closing, I will be completely honest. This has been stressful. It's very emotional for me. It's you know, this is you know, it's a huge responsibility for all of us. It's challenging for sure. We have a zero-based budget drafted here, you know, in front of everyone. I think it lies somewhere between extremities, two extremities. Applying the same budget, just increasing our costs, yet not adjust to cover our losses, subsidies, the same losses. Do the same thing every year without improved results. That's not data-driven. Create an aggressive budget, cover significant losses, thus increasing assessments, only focused on the numbers. That's purely data-driven. This new draft, I think, is somewhere in the middle. I think it's between two rationales. On the left hand, there's a low extreme, no measures, no changes, and then an extreme, you know, extreme options. That's not, you know, extremities aren't good either way. I want what's best for the entire community with all perspectives understood. I've consistently tried to be reasonable, but responsible. I mean, there's a fine line in there. It's been a busy 11 months, many opportunities to improve our operations, performance, service, costs, revenue. I've heard your feedback, members, committees, everyone. I've heard the feedback. I try to apply that. I try to share that perspective as best I can. You know, I'm going to continue to learn from the feedback. Nothing is absolute. I just want to thank George, all the department managers, a lot of hours. They sat down, they nugged it out. They know exactly what they need. They know what their costs are. They know what their equipment needs are. So we applied that. We applied that, you know. It was just a great effort. You know, I want to say I'm pleased with the effort. You know, it's an unknown as far as results. We can't predict everything, but we have to apply some rationale to what we do. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like us to just go around one director at a time for questions and comments. We want to avoid any kind of back and forth discussion since this, again, is not going to be a vote. So beginning with Mark.
Thank you, Nicole. I'm going to keep this short. I made quite a few notes, and I'm going to skip most of them. First of all, thank you to everyone who put the time into this budget. I know how exhausting it was, and it's not easy, and I really appreciate it. I think the path forward is not elimination of anything, but accountability. Aligning fees more closely with actual costs, the zero-based budget. Evaluating operations through this zero-based approach is the responsible thing to do. And making sure that no single amenity places a disappropriate burden on all members. Because like James just said, as a whole, the membership as a whole. Ultimately, this budget is about balance, protecting what we have, while making sure we're financially responsible moving forward. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
I don't have anything to.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. How are you this morning? Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. George, Randall, James, Nicole, fantastic work. Madison, great stuff. You guys have really brought forward an understanding of what a balanced budget can look like, and I appreciate it. I'm sure the membership also appreciates that. There is only one small, slight concern I might have, and maybe we can address that at a later date or something, but I would like to see a little bit more money go towards fire mitigation. You know, it's maybe even just like a small $50,000 add-on to that. I don't know if you can find it within the frameworks of your current budget, but that would be something that I would like to see. I'm sure the members would also like to see more fire mitigation. Other than that, I'm just thrilled to be on this board, thrilled to be a part of a group that has really come together and has shown what a cohesive group of individuals can do and accomplish in such a short amount of time, because we've only done this for, this board has only been doing it for a year. So, and you know, like James said, he hasn't even had a full year in. So the accomplishments are just by far more than I expected, and I'm so thrilled. Thank you.
Sound check? Okay. Kind of mirroring James's comment. This is a lot of work, a lot of dedication, and really on two fronts, because as most of you know, recovering from the decision to change to the Sync software was one massive job. And keeping current and catching up had to take place at the same time. It wasn't really until the fall we actually had the prior month's financials to be able to review at a board meeting. So when this started, and there were still reserve items catching up, as George mentioned, the new reserve specialist didn't realize we had a pool. And so you have day-to-day operations, and you also had a massive recovery from a decision that really pretty much floored this place. You don't have data, it's hard to manage anything. So I could just think of above and beyond is my appreciation for what management and their staff has done. And just to make sure everyone understands zero-based budget, it isn't, okay, everything has to break even. It's a baseline. We needed a baseline to work off of. And if you look at the assessment history here over the past years, there's been a lot of items included in operating funds that really should have been included as capital funds. And there's been, we needed clarity. So we needed a clear baseline, and I really believe we have a good base to operate from and move forward this year and be able to assess and evaluate performance much more efficiently on a timely basis. So thank you very much. Great job.
I would also like to thank you guys. I know it's a lot of work, and I know it's hard to make everybody happy, and I guess a compromise is when nobody's happy. I went through the numbers a little bit, and I still don't understand how we decide to raise something in one amenity and not so much in another. What is it based on? Is it based on we just throw an arrow and we're like, this year we're going to pick you, and you have 50% more, or next year it's going to be you? What do we base this on? Like, for example, okay, it's the equestrian center, it's the golf, I know. If we compare the two, how many people play golf, how many buy the annual passes? I guess it's 50 people or so, I don't know, 20? I have no idea. I would like to know that number. We have 30 boarders, we have lessons, we have people who visited, we have people who use the diving range who play once a week or whatever. I would like to see the numbers so I can compare what we actually have lost per person. Like, if we have 100 people visiting and, you know, having horses at the stable, and we have 120 people visiting the golf course or having an annual pass, that would mean we would still subsidize the golf course 2 times more. So,
George, would you mind responding to that? So Andrea is asking for clarification on why there have been certain amenities.
yeah.
And we actually have, there is reason behind that. So if you don't mind, can you share with her what we,
So we did, the first version of the draft that we sent out back in March did have a 55% increase to the equestrian center. So we did reduce it to 33% across the board because we felt like that wasn't equitable if we didn't do that across the board. So we did reduce the total increase to the boarding rates. And apart from that, we were looking at both Bear Valley Springs and surrounding boarding to figure out what a reasonable boarding fee would be.
can you also address the incremental labor costs though? Because that's one thing I don't think is well understood when the comparison between EQ and the golf course is commonly raised. Can you describe the difference in labor costs and the incremental factor? Just briefly, if you can.
So the main difference between the equestrian center and the golf course is regardless of the number of golfers you have playing, the base expense doesn't change. If you have one golfer or you have 100 golfers, the cost to maintain that golf course and the surrounding areas stays the same. The difference with the equestrian center is expenses increase or decrease depending on the number of boarders. So
I kind of understand.
I mean, it's an incremental cost that we have 30 or 29 or 30 horses, you know, 4 laborers, plus Lori, she's a working manager, in order to maintain the service for those 30 horses. If it were to increase, of course, we'd need to increase labor. If it reduces, the labor would reduce. I mean, the labor at the equestrian center is directly related to the boarders, the number of horses.
But isn't that the same for the golf course? Like every person who works for the golf course on the upkeep and all that, you know?
The greens would have to be maintained regardless. It's an asset. It's a huge asset. I don't know how many acres it is, but to not maintain it, if it were to jeopardize and to not maintain it, then we can't even use it. And I don't know if that course were to go, in the wrong direction and we don't maintain it, it becomes like some of these public courses that you see. I don't know how much money it would cost to restore it to proper conditions. That could be hundreds of, probably $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 to, with the seeding and the chemicals and the labor and the equipment needed. It's a large cost.
Okay, I understand. For a golf course, it is a lot.
To interject this is not intended to be a back and forth. We can go into more discussions next month when this is going to be voted on. I want to kind of contain this meeting a bit. So if you, I'm glad to have you wrap up if you like. I just want to avoid the
Okay,
continual back and forth.
I know. I like this back and forth, so that's just a natural thing. I understand, but I don't want to, but it could be a park, and it wouldn't have any upkeep, right? Just the extreme. I don't want it. I love the golf course, but, that's an argument against it. That's it. I don't want it. I just want family.
I would also like to say thank you to George and to James and also to Randall. I was present at the budget working group meetings as chair. And you know what? There's another group I need to thank, and that's the Budget and Finance Committee. Specifically, Elizabeth, the chair. shared in a recent chairs meeting how many items they were actively tracking and identifying in previous budgets that were being overlooked in the past. And I was not aware of how much they contribute to the process. So I absolutely want to give appreciation to the committee members involved. But George and James, and Randall included as treasurer, have really approached this from an incredibly fair and balanced perspective. And they've put in a tremendous amount of work to make sure that that is what was produced. And I'm just incredibly grateful. The majority of feedback we as a board and officers and management receive tends to be negative, and I understand why, because when you're satisfied, you don't usually speak up. You know, the satisfied people are the quiet ones. And I understand that when you're dissatisfied, your voice can be louder. I'm perfectly aware of that as being an individual myself with that potential. So because they don't receive the same proportion of positive feedback that I believe they deserve, I would just like to take this moment to provide it personally. Thank you.
My turn. Okay. Same. So the budget I support wholly, and the word that keeps coming up for me is trust. I wholly trust James and George and Randall, and I think it takes a village. And I'm not that great at math. Math is not my thing. My business is in feelings, and because it takes a village, and this POA includes lots of feelings, and I think George is really good at math, and Randall's really good at math. But also, Randall's good at feelings too, and James is also really good at feelings, and they can do it all, and that's actually required in this job, to listen to everyone and hear what is important to them, and take that in as important feedback, and then figure out how to also include the money part of it. And it's not always going to be perfect, and it is going to include frustrations, and change is hard, and it takes time, and we're all working towards something important, and we all love living here, and it isn't easy. And I just really value these people and what they all contribute to this team and this community, and I couldn't do it alone, and I'm proud of us. And when I see the budget, I kind of go, whoa, what's all this mean? But I know it's good, and I know it's important, and I'm really proud of us. And I think you guys are amazing. So thank you very much. Yes, that's it.
I so appreciate that applause. We have one director on Zoom. Josh, if you could go ahead when you're ready. Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you. Yes.
That's correct, Josh.
Thank you, Josh. Sean has a quick question.
Yeah, I'm sorry, George, to piggyback on Andrea's little thing that she's saying, because her concerns about the equestrian center and the rate increases, things of that nature. Did we have an increase in the golf per round?
33% across the board.
Across the board, 33%.
About 24% for the annual pass.
We're not going to have a debate right now. We can do that when it comes
Okay.
to a vote next month, Andrea.
The other real quick thing I did want to mention is I wanted to really, truly thank the staff, the managers, the employees. They've all come together to get this done for us. This is not just the board doing it. It's not just the GM doing it or the count. It's everybody working together. And so I'm very, very, very proud of our staff and our management team. They've done the right thing. And this, in a time where our economy is going up, for us to be able to reduce, unbelievable.
If there are no further comments from directors, again, avoiding a back and forth debate at this point, just any additional comments? Okay, we'll move on to the member portion. I would ideally love to approach this the way we would when there are resolutions on the floor. If you can aim to maintain a 1-minute comment, that is preferable. I will allow up to 3 minutes for those who need the additional time. This is not, I have no interest in silencing any members. It's just a matter of keeping things running in an orderly fashion. So the floor is yours.
Morning. Ron Freeman, member number 3405030. One, I'd love to reiterate what everyone has said. Thank all of you and all the people involved for this super hard work. I know it's got to be mind-boggling how much work it entails. A couple quick things. One, has anything been done does this budget address, for instance, the fact that the cost of diesel has gone up 60% in the last month? How is that going to affect our maintenance? Is that covered in any form in this? Because while it went up really fast, I don't think anyone sees it going down really fast. So if we don't account for that now, it could come back, I think, and bite us pretty hard later. My next one is a little different, and I don't know quite perfectly how to address this. Randall, you mentioned items included in operating funds should have been in capital funds, but I don't see anything in the budget that represents capital funds. So how do we address capital funds, i.e., the only mechanism I see right now for us to have improvements in capital assets, for instance, if someone wants to have solar for the clubhouse or the parking lot or the swimming pool, or if we wanted to build pickleball courts. I don't see any mechanism other than a special assessment if it's over 5% of the budget. So is there another mechanism? In the research I've looked into, there is a way, according to David Sterling, that you can have a line item in the budget for a capital improvement fund. So unless it specifically says we can't do that in our CC&Rs, I would like to know if in the future we plan to have a capital improvement fund for those type of projects. So basically it's building up a savings account now instead of having to have, hey, we want to have solar and it's going to require this big vote and it's going to cost X amount of dollars, or we have this savings account that we've been slowly adding to every year that we can draw some of those funds to help cover the costs of capital improvements. Thank you.
Let George respond to diesel first.
It'll be covered. We've been over budgeting for the last couple of years, so it should cover the increase.
Okay, yeah, Ron, very quickly, in the past, we've used operating funds for capital projects, and those have been buried in the history of our operating assessments. And it makes it confusing to have a baseline for what does it take to operate this place when you have capital projects being spent out of the operating funds. And so that's been one of the things that will not be recurring. Also excessive use of reserves for capital funds. If you use 200% of what should be reserves to buy a street sweeper, the members, just without knowing it, had a special assessment of about $47 a piece to buy an upgrade in a street sweeper, which I know you're aware of. At this point, there are no approved projects other than we have funds for Greenbelt, but that's an operating expense. It's not a project per se. It's not outside the scope of operations. When there is the A2 is the unofficial process, even though, the official process, in a way, I'd like to see the board use that as well when they present something, so that we're looking at all factors related to something, not only its cost, but what will it take to operate it later, what will the annual reserve needs be to keep it and replace it when it wears out. So if once, and as James has said, EC is working closely now with your committee to develop these projects. And to the extent reserves are not sufficient, then there will be a proposal and a vote and open meeting. Nothing in executive only. To discuss it and look at the incremental costs and say if it's, and there's a lot of confusion, if it's under 5%, it's still a special assessment. It just doesn't require a vote. And so that would be presented when the numbers are there for the board to address in an open session and get feedback from the members on the incremental costs, even though it is a board-only decision if it's under 5% in the aggregate for a year. As far as a capital fund, we can talk about that later. That's a longer discussion because what you're essentially doing is using the operating budget to put away money for a capital addition. No, okay, again, I think to keep this short, let's circle back on that. But again, the members are not going to see money spent or reserve funds in excess of what is allowable. And if there's something that we need and should be done, like if you're doing the roof and it make no sense not to take care of something while you're doing that, then you shouldn't be overlooked. It has to be addressed. I hope that answers your question, Ron.
Hello, Finn Migan. I wish we had seen the real budget and not just a summary budget. That's all we got. But to my point, let's look at one item only, otherwise you could be all day. Food and beverage is, you expect the revenue to go up 25%. That's an amazing amount for a restaurant. It's almost unheard of. But what's more troubling is you project revenue to be at $550,000 and expenses to be at $670,000. A normal restaurant would not stay alive. It wouldn't be here for 6 months. But we are, because it's a POA, we get discharge to members.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lauren Vella. I also want to share thanks. I mean, such a clear and concise job. Really want to thank, George, James, you've done an amazing job on looking at all the contracts. Cheers to you. That's amazing. Special thanks to Randall. I run the communications committee, and Randall and I have spent a good amount of time working on a document that we're putting out to help explain to members how decisions are made. And so members may not realize that Randall's spending a lot of time on the phone, certainly with me, and I'm guessing with other members, explaining how all this works. So I have learned so much in the process. I do have a couple of questions, and Randall, I'm just going to take advantage of having your email address to handle those offline in the interest of time. I do want to make 2 points, though, which I think is really important for the members to understand. One is about the Equestrian Center. So I love this chart, little pie chart, awesome. So we can see that the Equestrian Center is 2% of our POA fees, which is about $40 a year, basically. And actually, at the very emotional meeting where some members of the Equestrian Center were here talking about it, one of the fellas said, it's about $40 a year out of your assessment fees. And, that really was powerful for us. Like, oh, only $40 a year, that's basically what we're paying, $40 a year. Yeah, that is basically, according to the state, that is what we're paying. But I do want to share with you guys that what happened after that meeting is not a good thing. What happened after that meeting is a conversation with a board member about how, no, that's not true. It's much more than that. And so I took that to heart because that's the message being shared with our membership by disgruntled folks. There's so much misinformation. It is not much more than 2%. It is 2%. Members need to hear this. It is 2%. It is not much more than 2%. And after I got that comment indirectly, that, oh no, it's much more than 2%, that's not true, those numbers are not true, I talked with friends of mine who are members of the Equestrian Center. And they're like, no, they are measuring it wrong. And then I talked with Randall, how are we really measuring? I'm trying to triangulate the data, find out what's true. Here's what's true. According to this, it's only 2% of the data. Okay, it's $40 a year. I want to make sure members understand that because there's so much misinformation out there. The other point I want to make is sort of related to the question that Ron asked, which I think is a really, really important question. The way our budget is structured, it doesn't appear that there's a clear way to make improvements. I understand reserves are going to replace and maintain. The operating budget is going to be used to operate. Awesome job on both those things. Awesome. So clear, so transparent, so credible, frankly. Love that. Where do the improvements happen? And Randall, I'm a broken record. I've asked you this question. Ron just asked it again. How do we improve things? The only way, and the members need to hear this, the only way we can improve things, the way this structure is set up now, is through special assessments. So I can predict that we are going to have a reduction in our POA fees. Yay! Everybody's happy about that. Okay, in 30 days, everyone's going to forget that. And they're going to get an email. We have a special assessment in order to do this or that, a special assessment for this or that, a special assessment for this or that. And we're going to have
Wrap up,
people.
Lauren. We're almost to 4 minutes.
We're going to have members unhappy about that. So I want members to understand that without a way to make improvements, without special assessments, which is the only way right now that we can do it, there's no way. It's going to be special assessments. So there will be, and therefore special assessments are not going to be popular, so therefore they won't happen and we won't get any improvements. And that would be a darn shame.
I would like to respond. You don't need to stand there the whole time. Thank you, Lauren. I would like to respond to that because what members are not really aware of when that conversation happens is that you have been paying special assessments without your knowledge this entire time. It has just been done that way. So rather than having a special assessment where it's itemized and broken down and voted in open session by the board and publicly transparent, assessment increases that are essentially more permanent were used instead to fund these things. So you could have potentially paid far more in an assessment increase that you may never retrieve than you would have for a special assessment. So for example, I had a conversation with a previous board member regarding the pool. I think it was the pool. It was something that was paid for with budget surpluses. And the previous board member said, but we didn't have to pay a special assessment. Yet, the assessment increase was far greater than it would have needed to be to fund that item. I would have absolutely preferred to pay a one-time special assessment, fully transparent, itemized, voted on in open session, than to have my money being used without my knowledge. So let's keep that in mind as we approach this. And I agree, the word special assessment has a negative connotation because it's always been done that way. We're hoping to do things appropriately now, and I hope that members see that it's not anything they need to fear. Thank you.
My name is Maurice Hauser, 3405000. First, I want to congratulate the board and the budget committee. I think you guys do an amazing job. And I know it's volunteering, and I know it takes a lot of time just to read over what you presented today and try to understand it. Takes a long time, so congratulations, honestly, to all of you. That the assessments are going down, great news. I'm sure everybody will appreciate that. I've made a personal commitment that I'm going to try to participate in the budget committee meetings. I think it's important for the community. I love Pine Mountain, so it's just an intention for the future, but I intend on doing that. So with that, I want to refer to the subject that is in my mind for the last, 2 months, and it's the equestrian. And I think that what the budget shows regarding the equestrian is a compromise between the political side of it, which is Mark and Josh presenting a resolution for discussion, whereby clearly stating we want to close the equestrian, we want all those horses out of here, we want this rich, pampered pets at our expense out of here. That was the resolution that was discussed. I think this budget is a compromise between that, which was clearly untenable, and reality. Let me try to put it in the simplest terms possible, right? I am a member, and I use the pool, I use the golf, and I use the equestrian. I expect that when I go to the pool, it will not cost me the same as going to the YMCA in Santa Clarita and registering for a month. That will cost me $250 a month. I know that when I go to the pool, it doesn't cost me anything because my assessment, the money I pay every year, my assessment, is covering the expenses of the pool, the manager, the heating, the security, and everything else. Same thing for the golf. When I pay $8 to go and do a round of golf, it's insignificant. It's obviously way less than what it would cost me to go to do an afternoon of golfing in, in the San Fernando Valley. It would cost me $100, right? And that's understandable because the assessment of everybody is financing the amenities. Some guys use one amenity, others use another one. And that's exactly the way it should be. So when we look at the equestrian, and let me first state I have no beef in the issue because my horse is not boarding here. I took my horse out, and I'm boarding at Caddy Valley for training reasons because they have an amazing installation at Bonfield. I'm paying $368 a month. That's the boarding at Bonfield. Bonfield is, you cannot compare what we have here, which is a very basic horse keeping facility, with what Bonfield has, which is a true equestrian center, with a jumping course, a dressage course, trails around it, et cetera, et cetera. So pretending to put a fee on a boarding in Pine Mountain that is above what it costs in Bonefield is absolutely not logical. It doesn't make any sense. Because I expect that the amenity is to be paid with my assessment. The same way the pool doesn't cost me anything and the golf costs me a symbolic rate, I expect the amenity equestrian to cost me also a symbolic rate. Now, I understand that the basic difference is that the equestrian, like the golf, I can get a bucket of balls when I come so that I don't have to bring them from my house. And you need that and your golf clubs to enjoy the amenity. At the equestrian, you need a horse. And when you need a horse, you have to board him, you have to feed him, and you have to remove his, whatever the word is.
Yes,
His poop.
yes, I hear you.
Sorry for the word. So, but I think we're confusing here. Boarding is a requirement of the amenity, but it shouldn't be compared. It's the same as the clubhouse. I can come to the clubhouse. I will not order a hamburger, so it doesn't cost me anything, but I'll still be able to come, sit down, enjoy the TV when there's a football game. It doesn't cost me anything. Same thing should be treated the equestrian. The fact, if I keep my horse at my house, I should be able to take him to the equestrian, ride him, have somebody maintaining.
I have a point of order.
Maintaining the amenity.
Point of order, please.
Go ahead.
Can we just dispense with the 1 minute rule, make it a hard 5 minute rule?
Right, I lost track of time. I
And
apologize, Doug.
this gentleman's been up here 6 minutes, and these anecdotes are great, but they're not getting us anywhere.
So
It is true that I lost track of time on that one. I apologize.
me-
Thank you, Doug.
let me round it up then, right? The problem is that we're using boarding as part of the amenity. Boarding is not part of the amenity. And I'm sure the boarders at the equestrian would be more than happy to pool their resources together, pay for their feed, and for somebody to remove the poop of their horses, and they still would expect the amenity with the manager and the maintenance and the insurance and the security to be provided for them at no cost. Let me finalize by saying that that cost, the optional part, the feed and the removal of the poop of the horses, is probably $120 a month, maybe $150. We cannot subsidize the golf, subsidize the pool, and not subsidize the equestrian. That is a flagrant discrimination, and it's done to reach an agreement with the two board members that have clearly a political outlook.
Point of
Thank you.
order. Thank you. I need to clarify that this budget was prepared prior to either resolution submitted by Directors Bailey and Arman. This budget is not political. It is not influenced by directors. George and our general manager, along with the Budget and Finance Committee and our treasurer, have been preparing this for quite some time, and it coincidentally aligned with those resolutions haphazardly, in my opinion. It created a lot of chaos, a lot of misunderstanding, and I need to clarify that right now. This budget was not influenced by those resolutions. It was prepared prior to those resolutions. The budget working group had already met with the line items. So please, I understand that that's a perceived reality, but it is not accurate, and I need to clarify. The other thing I just quickly want to point out that was brought to my attention for clarity purposes related to Lauren Bella's comment is that please be advised that 2% reflects the current changes. So if a director in the past was stating that it was outside of that range, it was possible they were referring to the previous budget. There were expenses that were not allocated, including reserve components, propane, insurance, electricity, and water that were not allocated to the center. So when they were saying it's more than that, again, this is hearsay, I don't know what conversation you were having, they could have been referring to the costs that had not been historically allocated to the center. So also keep in mind the 2% is reflective of the current budgetary changes. Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
I think so, if you
Yeah.
close to the mic.
Hello? Yeah? My name is Jana Yekel. I'm a member 3507328. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I'm sorry that I'm going to be talking about the equestrian center. I'm a new member. I just bought my home last July, and I just want to give you my opinion or my thoughts on the large expected revenue budget increase, which I assumed is an effort to reduce member assessments, but I might be wrong. For whatever reason, whatever reason, it seems unfair and would create a hardship for members that do utilize it. In looking at the draft budget document posted, I see that the Equestrian Center expected revenue budget has been raised to $160,620, an increase of $72,840 from last year's revenue budget. That is an 82.98% increase. An increase, I asked our barn manager about how that amount would be met, but was told she hadn't been consulted about it. You're talking about all the managers working together on the budget, but apparently nobody talked to our manager for whatever reason, I'm not sure. Why would you not talk to the person that knows all the financials of the facility before making such a huge change? And why is the Equestrian Center the amenity that's the only one with such a drastic increase? Only 6 other amenities have had an increase ranging from $2,000 to $15,000, all well within their actual revenue they brought in last year. The center brought in $14,216 above their revenue budget last year, which should be commended since 9 of the other amenities had a loss. And 9 of the amenities' budgeted revenue has been lowered from the last budget. So why would you ask the Equestrian Center to find a way to earn more? Which of course means our board will increase. I see a proposed additional amount of $100 for each horse of my horses, which is 32.26% increase from my current board. Not to mention all of the fee increases, which I use. I understand the cost of operation increase, but 30% is greater, and I feel is unreasonable. When I compare to all the other amenities, it appears that we are being asked to contribute much greater revenue than others. Why is that? Because you feel less community members use the center? That is simply bias and discrimination against a certain portion of the community. Many of us moved here for the convenience of having an affordable equestrian center close to our homes, which would maintain an affordable fee to keep our horses at. By raising the board cost higher than other stables in the area, we are not getting a benefit other members using other amenities are getting.
We're at 3 minutes, if you could wrap up, please.
Okay. From what I read on the PMC History Facebook book, the stable has been a long and cherished presence in this community. I have only been here since last summer, but I've seen multiple events where community members come to celebration events at the barn where many members donate time and goods, plus the horses participating in community parades and families visiting the stables consistently to spend time with the horses, often taking riding lessons. I just feel that we're being discriminated against, and I just don't understand why there's such a huge increase in just one of the amenities. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, I hear you, and I hear the concern. And I understand that the concern is a lack of fairness, and the concern, discrimination is a harsh word. I just need to let you know that you are being heard, and I want you to understand that the people involved in this budgetary process care about equity and fairness and also fiscal responsibility, and they are not making these decisions to align with political preferences. So your voice matters, and I know that James and George will continually work on this to continually make it fair, and we hear you, And if there's any solution we can come up with that is an even better one, so that we can approach a balanced budget while also allowing our members to feel heard and their concerns appreciated, we will continually work toward that, I promise. Yeah.
And I would suggest talking to the manager about the budget.
Janet, welcome as a new member. I've been here 3.5 years. I wanted to make a few comments, though, and even with Maurice. The feed cost to feed the horses twice a day is $165 a month, per month. So there's just a lot of factors to consider across the board. From 2015 to 2025, the boarding fees increased $70, $7 a year. That's hardly a small percentage of all the other increases that we incur. Just to frame it, not arguing it, but anyways, thank you.
Carolyn Gilbert, 3508530. I hear the association fee reduced. Great. My biggest concern is the touting of special assessments and having the special assessments thrown at us anytime in between now and next year is actually going to cost us more in the long run. You have employees who are no longer here for whatever reason, and they are not being replaced. Another concern with that is that means that we have employees that will be overworked, doing double work, and still not being paid decently. I'm very concerned with the fact that this budget is a 2-page budget and that we did not receive in a full entire budget as we have in previous years. And again, my bigger concern is that we're going to get thrown a special assessments up to the 5% for the following year or whatever it is, and that's going to end up costing us a lot more, especially when people, as this board has said, lives on an income, and now they're going to use that income based on this new adjusted association fee, only to be hit with an association special assessment. Now they're going to have to find more money. I'm very concerned with that, and I don't think that that was the right decision to do. Thank you.
Congratulations on the decreasing for the assessment for everybody. A lot of people are in fixed incomes. The process has been changed. It's no longer projected, but zero budget. I'm very pleased. It's the second time in the history of PMC that has happened. And related to, because it became like a leitmotif, a special assessment. We did have a special assessments. When we were told that the pool would have $500,000 and end up costing us 1.3.
If the audience can please quiet down.
Nobody discussed it. We didn't vote for it. That was a special assessments. But the process for which it was done, it was behind the members' back. Some of the contracts were not signed, or they were not even discussed in open meetings. Some of the contracts were not even discussed among board members in executive meetings. So I welcome a special assessments. Why do I welcome a special assessment? Because people, the members, will have a chance to discuss any projects. Will have a chance to know where their money goes. There will be a community will have the chance to discuss among themselves, to see if they do want to pay for that or not. So I do welcome the clarity to know where our money is going. On that regard, and despite my congratulations and the work that this new leadership has brought to PMC, I still have some concerns. In the pie, we see a 32% spent on general and administrative. And I saw the process of allocating the utilities per department. I see that the administrative cost is the bigger percentage, but it's not allocated per department. That has been a criticism that given to the treasurer in the process, okay? So I would like to know exactly what is it that we're paying per department, for example, on insurance. Per department means I want to know how much the members are paying for the insurance for the equestrian center, for the pool, for the golf, etc. So that's my criticism, that we still don't know how much we are spending per department itself. Thank you.
Okay, it looks like we have one more.
Happy Saturday. You guys, I really want to say, James, Jorge, Randall, the team, you guys put together a lot of hard work. Fantastic. Looking at the budget, I see more transparency than I've seen in the actual coming up with these numbers than I have seen in the past. Last year, we did change insurance, so we got a bump by lowering our insurance rates. 3 years ago, the Equestrian Center was over $250,000 in the red. That has moved to a more reasonable number in these past 3 years. If you look at the calculation of the amount of red per horse, that number is staggering, okay? And I think everyone's going to look at it differently. Today, the pool's still locked up. No one gets to use it until the day it's opened. That's a capital investment that's underutilized, clearly. I drive to Bakersfield or I drive to Santa Clarita. I can go to a gym in Santa Clarita. I pay $30 a month. I get my swimming in through the winter when I take my trips down there, $30 a month, okay? I get to play racquetball. There's no racquetball courts here. I get to ride my bike throughout the trails. I don't ask anyone to help fund my bicycle repairs or anything like that. I enjoy the trails. There's a difference in equity here. Everyone's going to see it differently. Sean, I commend you to keep moving forward with Firewise funding. Let's keep that awareness going, because if we lose a community, it doesn't matter what the budget is, okay? Safety has to be our primary concern. Friday, we had an activity for the Peak and Peak out there. Cars were blocked up on Askin Court. Great thing to happen for our community, for Peak to Peak to have those activities. I have been preaching safety on that road for 3 years. We need to do something about it, okay? Lastly, a sign, my God, $100 for a post and a sign. That's well, we get stuck in with all this other stuff. We can't fund a little sign. I'm emotional about it because I have lost friends that have been hit by cars.
We're at 3 minutes.
Thank you, real quick. So there has to be some funding for some of these activities. I ask that safety be moved to the top of the list of our community. Thank you.
1 second. The treasurer would like to make a comment about a previous member question.
I don't have my laptop here, but I found the file I was looking for on my phone. There's a lot of misconception on being more diligent on not using operating funds for capital projects or not using excessive, like former Director Bennett, they called it blanket use of reserves. Our reserves are funded by components, by useful life, by replacement price. If we use blanket, we're just taking money from other reserves that the members have to then replenish out of the operating assessment. But for example, phase 1 through 2 consumed $210,000 of operating funds, budget surpluses. Instead of putting those back into the next year's budget, reducing what the members had to pay, there was no scrutiny on that. That money was just spent. There was no oversight, no accountability. Of our $695,000, better known as $700,000 write-off for phases 3 through 6, $245,000 came out of budget surpluses. Instead of going back to the next year, reducing our members' assessment and then asking for the money publicly with descriptions and detail, the money was just spent. We also had, for phase 3 through 6, $450,000 of reserves used for something that was not replacement of a reserve item. So again, it sounds frightening. However, the benefit of this discipline is when the board is doing something above and beyond what's required for maintaining and keeping everything functional, the members will hear about it in an open session. It's not going to be a surprise. It's not going to be a budget surplus that could have gone back, instead was redirected into a building fund. So it's not that frightening. We just, one step at a time, we'll deal with it as it shows up, and it'll be very transparent. So, thank you.
Good morning, Paula Cardea, 583. I also wanted to raise my concern about...
Can you say your name one more time?
Paula Cardea. I also want to raise a concern...
Sorry, your member number?
583.
Can you give us the whole?
350-8583 -1. 350-8583
Okay.
-1.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, I also want to express my concern about raising the fees proposing to raise the fee at the Equestrian Center. And I wanted to, I'm not sure if you know or the members know, but the fees have been already raised in the past years. Since 2019, Barnstall fees are up 21.6%, pipe crawl fees are up 23.5%, and pasture fees are up 24.9%. So we had already had an increase, so this further increase, it's a concern. I also want to, yes, confirm that the price of the indoor barn, proposing to raise it $100, it's very, to me, it doesn't reflect the local market. I also want to confirm that. Also, one statement that has been made is also concerning the fact that the operational cost of the Equestrian Center is directly proportioned to the number of horses. To me, that's a blank statement that reflects a place of ignorance, pardon me, but it doesn't work that way. These are live animals. There are so many other factors to be considered, and that makes me doubt that the experts in this field have not been consulting when making this decision. That's all I have. Thank you.
That was in reference to labor. So just for clarity, that was in reference to labor. The labor is incremental based on the number of horses
When you
boarded.
say that it's directly proportioned to
That was I
number.
used that word, so please.
I just want to say that it's a very broad statement, and it doesn't take in consideration other factors. So to me, I would invite you to look into that and see what other factors are involved into running a barn and take care of animals. So there are many other aspects that involves safety, quality services. So when you increase services, you need to consider that you also not, treating animals like, not treating animals, but just looking at, okay, equal amount, like such amount of horses, meaning just more time to pick up manure. It's not just that. So there are a lot of factors to be considered. So thank you.
Okay, if there are no further comments from the audience, may I have a motion? Did you have something you wanted to say, Mark?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll let Mark speak.
This was a budget meeting. Obviously, there's some people that seems like they're from a special interest group, so it's kind of gone away from the budget into one amenity. And since Director Armon and myself was accused of being political rather than being fiscally responsible, the gentleman mentioned that he put his horse in Bonfield. I believe it was Bonfield, because it was apparently more desirable. And I just wondered, I'm sure Bonfield makes a profit and remains self-sustainable. And I wonder how much do they make in assessment income?
Motion to adjourn?
Do I have a second? Second by Doug. Just discussion? Oh, Randall. Oh, no, all in favor? I thought there was discussion. Madison, are you in favor as well? Yeah. Okay, thank you, everyone. This meeting is adjourned.